Welcome to WAY2B TV, where there's a better way to be than atheist or theist. Let me turn Joni back on here. I had turned her off during the credits coming on. I got a story I want to tell you tonight, and I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to ask you a question. And when I ask you that question, I want you to be thinking about it, because when we get through with the announcements, which y'all have heard 100 times, then maybe you can have some thoughts about this question. But I was with a group of ladies the other day, and one of the women was grieving. She had lost her husband about a month ago. They had been married for over 60 years, and he was thought of as a absolutely wonderful person, and he was just this fantastic individual with a great family and a great attachment to his family and all that. And there was great stress with the kids and so forth about him dying. And she's in her 80s, and so was he. But when she was with the lady, she asked the question, I wonder where there's any support groups. There's usually some in the paper. I wonder where there's any support groups in town. And immediately, and this happened twice while we were talking, the two different ladies came on at different times in the conversation, but both of them did the same thing. They both asked her, well, what church do you go to? Well, she said, well, we're new to Lakeland. We've just moved here recently. Well, what religion are you? Now, the two questions are, what church do you go to, and what religion are you? And the second question met with silence. She didn't really say anything to that question at all. So the question for those of you that are in the chat room and on Twitter, think about this during the announcements while I go through the announcements. How should a considerate atheist or a considerate Christian, no matter which one you are, what would have been the considerate way to enter this conversation with this older lady? In other words, what would you have said to her when she said, I wonder if there's any support groups in town? Would you have asked her, what religion are you, and what church do you go to? So that's the question. And so I'm going to go ahead and do the announcements, and then we're going to talk about it. For the last several weeks, we've been building the playlist, Woe to You Religion, concerning Jesus' dressing down of the leaders of the organized religion of his day. The reported thoughts of Jesus, written a half century after his death, sound a lot like the churches in the United States today. At least they seem to match my own experience while participating with 4 churches. Next week, we're going to move on to our favorite playlist, The WAY2B, Recovering from Too Much Religion. And that's where we talk about the good news, that woe to you religion has not been. Our welcome contacts. As we move through this evening, we want your questions and comments. There are several ways to do this. First, callers can call 863-940-0047. Secondly, we have an active Twitter feed on screen throughout the broadcast. Just tweet hashtag WAY2BTV. We are in a startup mode, so when Twitter is being used, we keep it on, and when no tweets are coming in, we keep it off screen, rather than you just seeing the continuous rolling of things that I've tweeted over the week. We see all the incoming tweets on our screen regardless, and so I'm reviewing those all the time, and we will turn the Twitter on when people are using Twitter. The chat room is open. Both Joni and I monitor the chat room. You can interact with us in between broadcasts by email at interact@way2b.org, and you can text the Way to 22828 to receive our newsletter each Thursday morning. Each newsletter will have a direct link to the broadcast. The newsletter also contains the discussion starter videos we will be using that same Thursday evening. Finally, to receive direct notices each time we upload, please subscribe to our Way2B TV channel on YouTube. When you see the Way2B TV logo in the bottom right-hand corner, you can do so directly by clicking on it, and this would help us greatly. Well, we have Joni with us again this evening. Turn these off and go to Joni. Hello, dear.
Good evening.
Yeah. Well, Joni, first of all, what do you think about those two questions? I want to know, how would you approach... This lady said, I wonder if there's any support groups in town. Is that the first thing you would have asked her, is what church you go to?
I think I would have asked her how long she lived in Lakeland.
Yeah.
Because that would mean whether or not she was familiar with any kind of groups or whatever.
Right.
But then again, you and I are already couched in this kind of language that we wouldn't have brought up church first.
Well,
we might have led to church.
I think most of my life and most of our lives, both of us, we probably would have asked those same questions.
Absolutely. But we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, so it's hard to criticize, but at the same time, I think we all know what church do you go to assumes that you go to church. And when I got to thinking about it, well, what if I just walked up to a group of people and I looked at one of them and I said, where do you go fishing? As if everybody goes fishing, you know?
Well, or fishing pole with them.
Or where do you go bowling? You know? And I think that's no. The first thing you would have said is, "Do you fish?" Or if you say you were looking for a golf course, "Do you golf?" You wouldn't have asked a total stranger, "Where do you go golfing?" So, but you will ask
kids at the zoo when they approach me with some kind of a problem. I will say, "Do you go to church?"
Yeah, yeah.
Or I'll ask do you have a church family?
Right. That's because in this country, 80% of the people, according to Gallup poll, identify with the Christian religion. Therefore, it is assumed that if you ask the question, where do you go to church, there's an answer to it, other than I don't go to church. And what's worse about it is we know full well in this country, if someone asks you, where do you go to church, it is not considered a very easy task to answer, I don't go to church, in this country, because we know we're about to be judged when we do. You know? Somebody's about to think less of us because we don't go to church.
It also depends on the age of the person, and she was surrounded by elderly people, was she not?
She was, which is a good point. Sure. But that room is not full of that where we were, and I won't say where we were because I don't want to identify anything, but where we were was not a group of people normal, to that. In other words, the group that I was with, I would say probably 20% of them or more, 30% of them or more, probably have not much use for church. So it just depends. Well, I'll tell you why I say this. It was a well-educated group of people who have money. Now, a well-educated group of people who have money in this country is less likely to have the same beliefs. All right? And that just happens to be part of the demographics. There's nothing that you can change about that. The more educated that you get, the more that you question, and more that you ask, and the more the more skeptical you become. But I just thought that was an interesting.
The more free you become.
Yeah, more free you become. Jan writes, I would not have asked what church she went to. There are many support groups that have no religious affiliation, and I would have referred her to one or more of them. Jan said, I never would have asked her church affiliation. She asked a question and was responded to with a question. And that's true. what I said to her, I said, you have my phone number. This lady knows me pretty well. And I said, you have my phone number. And when I get home and you get home, if you want to, call me. We'll get on the internet, because she's in her 80s. We'll get on the internet and we'll look up support groups. I typed it up on my iPad right then and handed it across the table to her, and she could see all these support groups that were in Lakeland. And so I said, when I get home, you and I can go down them together, and I can tell you about them and read what's there about them. And you can write down phone numbers and contact information of the ones that interest you. And that was my answer to her.
Did she call you?
I did not know. She has not yet. I did not answer her with a question. Instead, that's what I said. I did say to the last lady that asked her, where do you go to church and what religion are you? I said, why do so many people assume that she goes to church? And then a lady asked me, she said, well, what is it you do? And I told her, that I was retired and that I do a little broadcast and stuff like that, that I have a group that I teach and whatnot. And she said, well, I see, how did she put it? I don't remember what it was, but I said the words, I really don't believe in anything supernatural. She said, don't you believe in heaven? I said, it depends on what you mean by that. Do I believe in a physical heaven? No, I do not. And she said, oh, that's so sad. And I said, well, for me, what's sad is to live your life and put off living your life until life is over. And thinking that everything's going to be fine after you die, but it can't be fine before you die. And so, it was it kind of brought up an interesting set of conversations and interesting questions. After everyone had kind of thinned out a bit, she said to me, she said, my husband and I didn't go to church, and my husband did not believe in anything like that. But he was a wonderful man. I said, I know you've talked to me about him at length. And I said, that's what counts. And I said, he had a good way about him, did she? She said, yes, he had a wonderful way about him. Colleen is actually on Twitter tonight. Let me turn her Twitter thing on. Let's turn Colleen on here. Let's see if I can get her up here. Yeah, there she is. She said her YouTube is not says having difficulties. It cut the end of the sentence off. That's something that the Twitter app started doing this past week. It cuts off the end of the sentence instead of word wrapping them down into the next space. So, but at any rate, so Colleen is there. She's watching apparently on her computer. Your computer has a chat room too, Colleen. If you're wanting to get on the chat room, right beside of the stream, there is a computer. There is a chat room right beside of the screen. Just don't put your YouTube full screen on your computer. And if you want to go to our YouTube page, it's youtube.com/WAY2B, WAY2B, content, CONTENT. It's youtube.com/WAY2B content. And it will take you to the page, and the link for tonight's show is on there. So if you'd like to go to your computer and do it, that'd be fine too. But at any rate, I thought those were interesting. That was an interesting exchange, interesting questions. And it made me think, is that really, and I thought about the way we've handled things all of our lives, Joni, and we would have both asked them same questions.
Oh, yeah.
We would have asked them.
As late as 10 years ago.
Yeah. We would have asked those same questions, but I guess it kind of shows you, looking back on it, I think to myself, that's the kind of assumptions that church people make. And I'm sure we've made those assumptions in all of our churches, that it was perfectly polite to ask anybody we wanted to, what church do you go to? and what religion are you? There's every assumption in those two questions that one, you are religious, and number two, you go to a church. And that's,
And if you answer any other way, you'll be judged.
right. One of the ladies said, "Well, I didn't want to." I said, "What?" She said, "What should I have asked her?" I said, "You should have asked her." Um, I said, "You should have asked her. Is she a religious person, or is she a churchgoer? You know, or you might even have just said, you know, uh, churches have support groups. I don't know if you're interested in those or not, but because this lady was very, very big in her church, very active in her church, you know, she asked the question she did. But it's what we all did, and what I think most Christians today do. They assume that the question is perfectly appropriate, and it's really not appropriate. You know, it's almost to the point. If you choose not to have religious beliefs, you choose not to be a church-going person, it's almost like asking the question, when did you stop beating your wife? You know, because in a lot of ways you're assuming a lot in the question, you know, and it's difficult to answer. How does a person answer the question if they don't go to church and they're not a religious person? How do they answer those two questions?
I don't go to church. I'm not a religious person.
Right. And immediately, you know, they're either the kind of person who doesn't care if they're being offensive, or they worry that answering that way is offensive, or worse yet, they worry that answering that way will damage their relationship with the person they're talking to. You see what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's too bad. Jan said, asking that question is an invasion of privacy in my mind. It's too personal. And I think that's correct. Colleen said, I'm watching on Xbox. Now that's a new one. I'll have to save that tweet.
I don't know how to do that.
Somebody watched WAY2B TV on Xbox. Oh, that's pretty cool. So, well, Colleen,
I believe you have arrived.
You just keep, yeah. I'll leave the Twitter feed on. You can keep commenting on there. You're seeing your own feeds on there now. So, that's interesting. Jan, are you seeing Colleen's tweets? And there's the contact information just came on the screen. It's automatic. I don't have to fool with it. It comes on every once in a while all by itself. But at any rate, our video tonight. Our video in the video this evening, the ancient writer continues his portrayal of Jesus' warnings concerning religion. Jesus' followers were reportedly known as people of the way. The ancient writer depicts religion as being in the way of the way. This video contains a very brief summary of past videos and then explores the ancient writer's depiction of Jesus, attributing 4 traits to religious leaders. He says of religious leaders, they are counterfeit, they are dead inside, they deny their real role and identity in society, and they have always been like this, and they always will be like this. And so that's a pretty important set of assertions. So I'm going to go ahead and start the video, and we'll be back in just a moment. In the previous Woe to Religion videos, the ancient writer represents Jesus as saying, religion is based on the authority of tradition. Religious leaders burden their followers and make no effort regarding the burden. Everything religion does, it does to be noticed. Religion wants to be revered. Religious leaders want to be put on display and honored, and religious leaders adopt lofty titles. Religion is an impediment to being in the way. Religion is calloused. And religion searches far and wide for adherents and then makes those new converts miserable. In the previous video to this one, we began the ancient writer's depiction of Jesus concerning stuffed staff and rituals. In this video, the ancient writer has Jesus continuing this counterfeit nature of religion. Woe to you, religion, hypocrites! For you clean the outside of the cup and of the dish, but inside they are full of robbery and self-indulgence. you blind religion, first clean the inside of the cup and of the dish, so that the outside of it may become clean also. Religion whispers in your innermost ear a prioritized checklist of some acceptable image. When you try to go there, it may make you sad, frustrated that you cannot measure up. I still ask myself regularly, have I so learned how to look good and how to sound good that I've forgotten how to just be good? There must be a better way. The answer lies on the inside of the cup. Religion seems satisfied by random acts of kindness, seen outwardly, rather than a healthier, ongoing, and visceral way to be inside. Religion spends relatively little time on the inward journey. The repetitious rigor of religion places a focus on the stuffed staff and the rituals. To survive, how could it be otherwise for religion? The ancient writer continues by having Jesus saying, religion is therefore dead inside. Woe to you, religion, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside appear beautiful, but inside they are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. Even so, you too outwardly appear righteous to others, but inwardly you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Religion lives in a surreal state of mind, sometimes in business casual, sometimes in a beautiful robe and a broad stole. Religion stands before its parishioners, satisfying their demand for a weekly feeling. The way provides a means of finding inward contentment, peace, in spite of life's troubles or the pressures others place on us. For the majority of my time in religion, my salaries came primarily from providing momentary escapism from these pressures. I should have been a purveyor of the way that makes a follower of the way more content and resilient throughout every area of life, in family, faith, and career. Religion desperately protests. Jesus is talking about someone else, not me. Religion disputes its own existence. The ancient writer attributes to Jesus one last woe, declaring religion's propensity to deny its own role and identity. Woe to you, religion, hypocrites, for you build the tombs of the prophets and adorn the monuments of the righteous, and say, if we had been living in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partners with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. Consequently, you bear witness against yourselves that you are the sons of those who murdered the prophets. Religion's throat is sore from insisting it is not the ones to whom Jesus refers. We might say, had we been living when Jesus spoke, we would not have done as religion did, we would have followed the way. The hypocritical practices outlined by the ancient writer could not be more evident in our own religious lives today. We bear witness against ourselves. If the phylactery fits, wear it. We are they. Then the ancient writer has Jesus saying religion has been in the past, will be in the future, and is presently threatened, defensive, and predictable. Therefore, behold, I am sending you prophets and wise persons and journalists. Some of them you will kill and crucify, and some of them you will scourge in your religious halls, and persecute from city to city, that upon you may fall the guilt of the righteous blood shed on earth. From the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the religious hall and the altar. Truly I say to you, all these things shall come upon this generation. If the ancient writer was correct in his assertions, Jesus was threatening religion's position in society. He predicted religion had always, and would always, continue to resist such threats, whatever it takes. We see it today. Religion seems to be never ending, a cycle of going back to the future, of faith in our stuff, staff, and ritual. All right. Well, Carol's on there now too. So Carol and Colleen and Joni and Jan and Mary are all there. We've got the Twitter turned on because Colleen is on Twitter tonight, and she's typing her notes in there. You're gonna have to keep them short, unfortunately. She says she's watching on her Xbox, which I think is pretty fascinating. That someone be watching on their Xbox. Jan says, in my hometown, there's a senior retirement complex owned by a church that keeps getting in the news. Seems that the AC has not been working properly for months, and the elderly are suffering, she says. She says, don't know the church's position, but from the news perspective, why would a church or denomination want to continue to allow such a negative view of themselves? Well, some churches are poor. You know, you've heard the expression poor as a church mouse. Maybe they just can't afford to fix their air conditioning. If that was my parents that were in there, I probably would be looking for some place to take them, including to my house for a little while if they were going to fix the air conditioning. If they weren't, maybe to someplace else to live. But that's pretty hard on older people when the air conditioning goes out, especially down here in Florida. It certainly is very difficult on people. You're from New England, aren't you, Jan? I think that's right. I don't know if you're talking about in your hometown. You said that maybe it's far enough north that it's not that hot. I don't know. Jan said it's not money. They just sold a lot of property for a lot of money. Well, I don't know. I don't know the situation, but doesn't sound too good, does it? At any rate, what did y'all think about what I had to say about this last Woe to You religion video, where Jesus talks about them being individuals who are counterfeit. They're dead inside. They deny their role in society. They've always been like this. They always will be like this. And in other words, Jesus said religion is just going to stay this way, is what he's saying. And it will always have a counterfeit nature to it. It'll always have a calloused side to it, a kind of a narcissistic kind of an insight. A lot of religious leaders do. A lot of ministers are almost unmoved emotionally altogether. And part of that is from seeing so much grief, I guess. But it's a difficult situation. A lot of people, when they get, I've heard so many people in my church life say that when they came, especially new people who come, they become popular somewhat, and people invite them into things, into groups, and they invite them into organizations like maybe a planning committee or being a teacher in a Sunday school class, or maybe invite them into a finance committee, or anyway something. And the closer they get to leadership, the closer they get to the inner workings of the church, the more arguments they hear, the more difficulty they have, and the less like the kingdom of heaven it appears. And that's what they came looking for. As I said in the last video last week, Jesus said, you go far and wide, you hunt for one proselyte. When you find that one convert. That's what a proselyte is. You find that one convert, you make them as much a child of hell as yourselves. And that was what the ancient writer attributes to Jesus. And that was, as I said before, and I have to keep putting this in there, as if the scuttlebutt that was going around was somewhat like what Jesus actually said when he was alive. And then the writer accurately reported that scuttlebutt. Then maybe we do have the tone of and the overall contiguous line of thought of Jesus. We can only hope that we can find that. We may not be able to find that, but all total in the writings of the New Testament, I think I do see that. I think I see an individual who was teaching something that was very valuable to society, but it also managed to let people think of religion as being unnecessary. In other words, the load that they put on your shoulders, they didn't have to lift a finger to get it off. You could get it off yourself. Matter of fact, you could allow it to never be put there. And if somebody asks you, what church do you go to? you would just simply say, I'm not religious. You'd answer the second question in response to the first. And in reality, I think that's probably more like what Jesus was. Of course, for me, there's one simple assumption that I make that is a bit of tension for some people, especially if they are deeply religious and been close to it all their lives. The assumption that I make is that supernatural things do not happen. The reason that I don't believe in supernatural things is because I don't believe that they happen. Now, that's not to say that it's impossible that there are supernatural things. I just never have seen any evidence to tell me that. I've never seen anything that would cause me to believe that. I talked about it with you all one time. There's a man named James Randi who's offering $1 million prize if somebody can prove it once to him. If somebody could just prove a supernatural thing to him one time, they win $1 million. And no one's been able to collect that money now in decades and decades of him offering that money. So that's the way that is. Well, we got more tweets and more chats. Let's see what we got going on up here. Jan says it's in Atlanta, the church she's talking about. I think the example I provided shows callousness and greed. And Carol said, I think Jesus was very straightforward. Preachers today should listen to those words today. Jan says, my screen is freezing up. And Carol said, so is mine. Oh, I see. And yeah, and so is mine, y'all. Let's see. Have you refreshed it? Well, now it's not. I think YouTube is having an issue. Remember the other day, or when we first started, I think the second or third show, YouTube had about 3 or 4 hours of really bad freezing up and causing a problem. Joni, are you getting freezing up where you are? Joni, I think I've got you turned off. Sorry about that. I had you turned off.
Shame on you.
Yeah, shame on me. I had you turned off because of the video. Is your screen freezing up also?
It's not freezing up right this minute, but it's latent. It's choppy.
Yeah?
Choppy.
Right. You may want to try going out and back in. Let's see what Colleen has got to say here. Let's see. We already saw that one. My daughter is on my iPad. I can't see the rest of it, Colleen. I'm sorry. The Twitter app started cutting off the end of the sentences this week, and I'm hoping they're working on fixing that. I sent in a help ticket.
Can you read it from the Twitter itself instead of on the screen?
Let's see. Yeah, that's a good point, Joni. I may can. Let's see. She says, I do not think that I ever measured up to my parish priest. And the other one, she said, my daughter is on my iPad, first time listening. That's wonderful. Hello, Colleen's daughter. I don't know what your name is, but hello. And we're glad you're there. But at any rate, yeah, Colleen's on Twitter tonight. That was Carol's job for a while, and now Carol's on chat, and Colleen's on Twitter. So Jan said the screen is good now. Yes, so's mine here. Is yours up and running again, Joni?
Yeah, it seems to be.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. I'm glad they're back up and running. But yeah, it's a situation where the whole thing that we've been reading on Woe to You Religion, I was an adult before I heard any of that. Now, why is that, you think? How many of you all heard that, knew about the woes, and heard those woes for most of your life? Or how many of you simply didn't hear about them, until much later in life? Or you may have heard about them for the first time from me. I've heard about them.
I'd heard about them all my life, but they were those people out there.
Oh, that's true. We're not the scribes and Pharisees. The problem is the woes are less tongue-in-cheek than the parables. You know what I mean? They're more straightforward. And they're not stories. They're not parables. They're just straight out, you're like dead men's bone. They're analogies and allegories, but they're not. They don't. They're not like parables where you got to figure out what it means. And so the problem is, you can say you know, just like in the video tonight, you can say that's not me, that's not me, that's not me all you want to. That's the scribes and Pharisees back then. And if we'd been living back there, back then, we would have gone the way Jesus taught, and we wouldn't have been like the scribes and Pharisees. But the problem is, when we look around in our churches, and as a pastor, I can promise you this is true. When you look around in the churches, at least the ones that I pastored, it couldn't be more like those passages. You think so, Joni?
No.
Yeah.
I used to, when we were doing the cantatas at Christmas, not so much Christmas, but at Easter, when we would have to yell things like, kill him and crucify him and give us Barabbas and those kinds of things. I had a hard time saying them, but it also made me realize that if I had actually been there, I probably would have been saying, crucify him and give us Barabbas.
Right.
Because that was the tide. It was a mob.
Right.
And the only way you get out of a mob mentality is to step away from it and not get involved. Well, religion has become the mob.
But see, the shouting, crucify him, the Bible actually says in the text of the ancient text of the ancient writers, actually the words say the scribes and Pharisees convinced the crowd to ask the Romans to crucify him. Okay? Now that's
what the text of the cantata said.
Right. Well, that's part of the story. Now,
right.
And so that's just a backlash from being someone who threatens religion. Okay?
Right. I agree.
Well, it's just...
But we weren't the Pharisees. They were those people out there.
Right. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to in the last few months that if I reveal what I believe and what I think about it all, and try to say that Jesus taught us all something that's very valuable, I believe, and that it's worth teaching and it's worth learning and it will change your life, but there's nothing supernatural about it. And there's nothing supernatural, in my opinion, that ever happens. But instead, it's just a naturally super thing. Not a supernatural thing, but a naturally super thing. And so, you would not believe the look on some people's face when you admit, especially if you admit as a person with a master's in divinity from a 150-year-old seminary that taught Greek and Hebrew, you have a hard time believing that person has that mindset, but it's that very seminary that taught me to be able to think that way, to think rationally about what it is I believe and what I don't believe. And I've never, and you know that from being around me as a pastor all these years, that I have never been into the supernatural. I've had many a person try to make a big deal out of a picture, and it looked like it's got a smudge place in it, and they say, that's Jesus, or whatever. Or, you know, the Mother Mary on the fog in the window. I have always poo-pooed on those things. I've always just said, that's not so. I mean, that's not how that is. Or somebody put, you know, I was driving downtown. For instance, anybody that knows me knows full well that I have parking magic. That I almost never drive up to a place that I'm going, never drive up to a place where I'm going and there's not a parking place just almost right in front of it, even downtown. And so I have parking magic. Well, part of that these days is a handicap tag. And I'm sure that is quite handy. But I rarely ever get in a handicapped space. I usually get in a different space. That's number one. But this has been happening for years and years and years. Downtown Murfreesboro, I didn't have a handicap tag. I got one when I got down here, and I started going to Disney some. And I had to have a handicap tag to unload my scooter when I got to the walk at Disney, and you couldn't get up in that area without getting through the guards, and you had to have a handicap tag to get through the guards. So that was the reason I got the handicap tag, because I try to walk as much as I possibly can. But at any rate, I walk the dog with a scooter. But the thing about it is that even before I got that handicap tag, I still always had a good place to park. I said all that to say this, and that is that um, there's nothing supernatural about that. Okay, I'm lucky, I guess, or it's nice that I get a parking place normally. But I'm sure after saying that on air like that, tomorrow it will pour down rain, be a gigantic thunderstorm with wind and lightning, and I'll have to park 40 feet from where I'm going, okay, or 100 feet from where I'm going, or whatever. So, but it's not magic, okay? Amber Klein, Colleen's daughter, Amber said, "This is Amber is on here, Joni."
I see that.
Yeah. Well, hi, Amber. How are you? Let's see here.
I said thanks.
This down a little bit.
She just subscribed.
Yeah, she did. Well,
Hey, thank you.
good for you. The Colleen wound up getting kicked off onto Twitter, and her daughter got her iPad. That's pretty interesting. Colleen must be a good person. So, any rate, let's see what Jan said. Let's go back up here. Colleen, I'm now listening and watching on Xbox, chatting on my laptop. Well, that's pretty cool. Colleen says it's still buffering though. Jan said yes, same here. Mine's running pretty good. Is yours running, Joni?
I'm not listening to it because I'm watching chat.
Okay. Carol said, I'm back. I didn't even hear about them. Let's see. Mary didn't hear them either. Colleen's daughter here. I think we got all that. Let's see. Colleen says, I have been telling her about the WAY2B. I don't know what Amber is saying. Good, thanks for asking, to. I get behind in the chats, Amber. Sometimes they chat. There's a 30-second delay between me actually saying it, sitting here in my living room, and you all hearing it. And so when you all hear it, you hear it 30 seconds after I said it. So when you respond to me, like if, let's say I asked a question and it's a yes or no question, and you say yes. Well, let's say I asked 3 of them. I have no idea what you're answering. And so sometimes I get on the chat room and I start answering questions. And as I answer those questions, sometimes I'm way off base because I'm talking about something else entirely than you were. But we just do the best we can, huh? So, at any rate,
It's all good.
it's all good. As Joni said, it's all good. But religion has been that way, and it's always going to be that way. And that's one of the things that people have nothing to fear from people who don't go to church and don't have any religious beliefs. They have nothing to fear from them at all, because there's religion is going to be around. Religion is very attractive to people. It is easier to believe in some supernatural deliverances coming than it is to deal with your problems. It's easier to think that life is not good and is a very negative thing by nature, and but one day you're going to die and everything is going to be wonderful. But
it's the procrastinator's answer.
It is a procrastinator's answer, and it means that you're going to wait until life is over. You know, I tell you what. Since Colleen and Amber are both on chat now, I'm going to turn Twitter back off so that we don't have it on, because it's recording, and I don't want to record on the whole video if it's not going to be active. Let's see here. Carol said, "Gee, I have parking panic." Oh, manic.
I think she means magic.
Oh, I have parking magic too. Must be the hand of the Lord. She said that even sounds ridiculous. Okay. Colleen says, my sister believed in the parking angel. Jan says, well, having a parking angel too, perhaps it's a leprechaun. And this is these chats are really weird. Colleen said, LOL, look for the pot of gold. And is LOL laughing out loud or not?
I think so. Then again, I'm not in touch. So
yeah, I've always gotten confused about what LOL is.
Is the pot of gold at the bottom of the parking meter?
Huh?
Is the pot of gold in the parking meter?
Yeah, yeah. Well, when we get back to um, the way to be next week, we're going to start on that. I'll be out 1 week. I'll be doing next Thursday night and the Thursday night after that, and then I'll be out 1 week, and then I'll be back. That 1 week, I've already scheduled a pre-recorded show, and so I'm going to do something. Joni and I are for a pre-recorded show. I'm going to try to get her to help me with it, and
Never heard of it.
I am. But anyway, we're going to get on here together. I hope sitting right here because I can bring her in by Twitter, and she can be a little bit of it. She didn't have to be a big part of it. And but anyway, there'll be a pre-recorded show for that night. And what you'll do, it's in the live feed, and it says pre-recorded underneath WAY2B TV, but then you launch it from the chat room. In other words, if you watch the countdown timer until it goes black, all you're going to see for the next hour is black. Okay, so when it gets down to it's just a reminder. In other words, if you're watching the countdown timer, it will not show the show there. You'll have to click on it in the archive. I'll upload it to the archive on that Thursday, and so you'll see it there. And you can watch it, probably be able to watch it during any time during the day. I'll probably upload it early, and then you don't have to watch it at 7:30 if you don't want to. You can watch any time during the day if you want to, or you can not watch it at all. I don't care. Well, I do care, but
I started to say that's wrong.
Yeah, that's not true. But you may want to take a day off too. But at any rate, well, Amber, I'm glad you're there. Colleen and Carol and Joni and Jan and Mary have literally saved my bacon. This is our 12th show. We've just barely gotten started good, and we're in that infancy when people have to struggle, and that's what we're doing. We're struggling through it day by day. The way to be will probably involve a lot more detailed work than Woe to You Religion has, and it will take us longer to do. The Woe to You Religion I only did in 4 sessions. There'll probably wind up being 5 or 6 sessions before it's over with, but I did it in 4 sessions on purpose. And then the For Heaven's Sake video wound up being about 7 videos or something like that. And then the Way to Be videos, though, probably will run maybe 10, 12 sessions in order to be able to get it done. And so we'll start doing that next week. And as we go through the Sermon on the Mount, and that's what it is. It's just simply Jesus talking about the way to be, what we call the way to be. He outlines what it means to be content in life. And if you want to kind of know, we're probably going to start off by watching the Sermon on the Hay that's already been uploaded along with another video. But we're going to watch the Sermon on the Hay because what I did is I sat down on a bale of hay in front of a green screen and chroma keyed out the background and put myself in a farmer's market. And I got on a straw hat and some coveralls and a plaid shirt, and I do the Sermon on the Mount as a farmer sitting on a bale of hay in a farmer's market. And that video, I think, outlines pretty well. And then as we go through the Sermon on the Mount, you can ask yourself if you see what I've said in that. Because Jesus seems to have outlined very well what, I don't know about your grandparents, but I can tell you in bits and pieces, my grandparents communicated just about every bit of that to me. One grandfather in particular, I used to spend whole days from sunup till sundown. We would be on the lake before sunup, and we would be coming into the dock in the dark. And that grandfather taught me more about the way than I've learned in the last 10 or 15 years. And it's what made it, I think a big part of what made it seem so easy for me to see was that all Jesus was saying is that we, if we are poor in spirit, not proud in spirit, but poor in pneuma, poor in spiritual knowledge. In other words, we're humble about the things we think we know about spiritual things. If we mourn our own condition, not somebody else's. If we are gentle in our relationships. If we hunger and thirst for righteousness, but we don't think we're full of it. If we give mercy for mercy, and we give away mercy and causes other people then to respond to us in kind, like we respond to them in kind. But when you respond in kind to people who are ugly to you, all you're going to get is people shaking their heads and shaking their faces in each other's. And so, when he said, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy," he was just talking about you respond in kind less often, and people respond to you in kind less often. And then he talked about being pure in heart and being able to see God in other people, and about peacemakers who are known as God's children. Well, to me, that just starts out. I mean, that's just the first few verses of the Sermon on the Mount. And it just starts out the tone of the Sermon on the Mount saying, there is a way to be. There is a way to be in life. And then he goes through and he illustrates that. He also talks about the benefits of it. He talks about the scribes and Pharisees again toward the end of it, and about the fact that they are counterfeits. It's interesting because one of the reasons I wanted to teach it in this order, this is the first time I've taught the kingdom of heaven as a figure of speech to start with, and then woe to you religion in the middle, and then the kingdom of heaven last, instead of doing it the other way around. Because you need to know what he said about the kingdom of heaven as a figure of speech, and you need to know what he said about religion and about the problems of religion. Then you can understand the Sermon on the Mount best of all, because then it makes perfect sense as you go through it. In the past, when I've been in churches trying to teach that same material using the Sermon on the Mount, I've had to, when it said kingdom of heaven, I've had to just almost bite my tongue because I couldn't explain the kingdom of heaven to you in the midst of that. Because when I start talking about the kingdom of heaven being a figure of speech, people get pretty uptight. And in a church, they can get real uptight. Well, the thing is jumping up and down here. Carol said, "We love you and Joni and love the way. Of course we're here." She also said, "and each other, very true." Colleen said. Not sure what the rest of that was about. You know what they're doing?
About parking places?
Yes.
They were.
Let's see. Colleen says, "Yes, laugh out loud, LOL. What if you get a whole line of blessed people in a parking lot? Who's more blessed?" Let's see. Jan said, "Freezing up again." Colleen said, "Same here." Carol said, "I'm good." That's debatable, Carol. Jan said, "The one who gets the parking spot is blessed." Any rate, this show has been more about parking spots than it has been about Jesus and the way to be, I think.
I don't think I go quite that far.
Huh?
I don't think I go quite that far.
Well, it's still been fun. I mean, it's my stream is freezing up again here, Joni. I don't know if yours is or not. I've got the little. There's a guy. I don't know if anybody can hear me or not, but there is a guy on YouTube who has a thing called the Andy Pollock Show or something like that. At any rate, he has, without question, a really good sense of humor. He's a comedian, and sometimes he will do this on air. Let me get to the right camera shot so I can show you. He will do this. He'll be talking along, and in mid-sentence, sometimes in the middle of a word, he does it perfectly. He will do this. And then one of his producers will put a little swirly thing on the screen. and then he'll smile and he'll go, "You're not buffering." And he can do it perfectly. I can freeze dead still. I've never seen anything just like it. So at any rate, it's getting close to time for us to go. I thought maybe we might put Joni full screen just so y'all could all see her there. And so I could use all my buttons on my little box. So,
You're not skipping on my feed. Well, I can hear.
Oh, good. You can hear? Okay. Can you hear me live also?
I can hear both. I have an ear for both.
I can't see how you can stand that. I really cannot see how you stand that. Oh, cool. The two gals I married a week or two ago, my first gay wedding, they just sent me a text and said, we got the official paperwork from the state of Florida today. So I sent in the license and everything was signed, processed, and they got the official documents today that they are a married couple in the state of Florida. How about that? That's pretty cool.
You send the one to Tennessee too?
Huh? The one I've to Tennessee still sitting on my desk. I may wind up bringing it home with me. And I've got some cards I got to mail to Mary and Jan sitting on top of it. So if I ever get up to the post office, I'll do both of those, or I'll mail the cards and bring the marriage certificate for that other couple in Tennessee home with me. The reason I had to print a second marriage certificate, you all, is because the bride misspelled the groom's name, and I put it on the wedding certificate.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, that's how that got like that. The bride misspelled the groom's name. Anyway,
can't fuss too much at you then, can they?
Huh?
Can't fuss too much at you then, can they?
No, not too much. But I need to get it to them. I should have already mailed it to them a long time ago. But it looks nice. I reprinted it. It looks gorgeous. So, and they carried their marriage license back because they wanted to take it to the office before they left Florida. They were driving back home, and so they brought it with them. Well, I hate it because you guys had trouble with your stream tonight. I will upload this tomorrow morning. In the morning, I'll put it together. It doesn't take me long, and I'll upload it before most of y'all get out of bed, most likely, because I get up at 4. And so I'll go ahead and do my Saturday morning thing, and then I'll upload it to YouTube. It'll be there if you want to go on YouTube and look at it. It'll also be in the newsletter that you get on Saturday morning. And on Saturday morning, you'll see that link to this show on there, and you can click on it, and it will come up, and it won't have any buffering in it. That's what's interesting about it. I'm doing a hard recording on my hard drive, and YouTube is also doing a recording that's online. I can download that recording that's online if I don't have one myself, and then of course the one that I have is always better than either one of them anyway, because I'm recording it straight to my hard drive as we produce the show. So that means that the archived ones, they're the exact same show. You see that the soundtrack is never clipped, so you see every bit of it. And all I do is I sometimes clean up the opening and the closing if I missed it on the timing or something like that. But as far as the soundtrack of me and Joni talking and the chats and all that kind of stuff, nothing is ever clipped or cut out. All my mistakes are there. All my misspoken words are there. I almost laugh at myself out of this chair sometimes, listening to myself make huge mistakes. Sometimes you'll see a little thought bubble above my head on one of these archive videos, and it says in that bubble what I thought I was saying, so what I should have said, and because I'll say the wrong name or attribute the wrong writer or do something silly, and so at any rate, we are about ready to go to credits. If anybody's got any closing words, I do hate it that you had to wrestle with your streams and all of that. I don't think I have any new chats other than Carol's said it keeps coming and going on her. Jan says I can hear you both. So it says we have 5 on here watching now. I don't even know who all the 5 are. I guess it's counting Joni and Jan and Colleen and Carol and Amber, I guess.
If she's on a different device.
Well, she said she was watching on Xbox but chatting on her iPad, and Amber's watching on the iPad. So I think they have both of them going. So it would show them as 2.
Yeah.
2 people going. Mary, I always feel like you're in the background, and I want to hear from you, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like you're left out or something. So I hate that. I want to hear from you, and so please do pipe in, even if you have to get on Jan's chat and use it. Carol said, can't hear you, but have a great week. I'm going on vacation too, so won't be there Sunday afternoon, but we'll tune in Thursday. And she said bye now. And I'm going to have to say bye because it is now the bottom of the hour. So thank you guys, and I love you all, and I'll see you Thursday night, and those of you all in town that come to the private meeting, we'll see you on Sunday afternoon.